Hello and welcome back to Scale War Machines. Last week I made a video all about a paint range, Green Stuff World, and that got me thinking about paints in general and the paints I use here at Scale War Machines. So I want to do a small series looking at which paints I use, why, how and when. What I'll do in this series is I'll make a bunch of videos looking at the different paints that I have access to and investigating what I think are their strengths and weaknesses and how I use them. In each of the videos I'll try and spin off and show some of the new releases, some of the formats they have, the different products within a particular paint range, and also I'll try and always have a practical component in every video and try and show you or demonstrate either new products or the ways I use a particular paint range. There's no end of paints available now, so I could probably double this selection, but let me quickly run through what I do have. So over here broadly we've got the acrylics, things like Vallejo, Ammo by MIG, Scale 75, Andrea, AK Interactive. Then we move across, we've got some slightly rarer paints like the Comarts, again those are acrylics, Dark Star. Then you move towards long established acrylics like Tamiya, Orgun's Sangyo. We've got some of those newer entrants like Real Colors from AK Interactive. And then of course within Tamiya there are other more lacquer based products. There's some rarities as well like Model Master acrylics before we move on to enamels, some Model Master there, and of course Humbrol, and slightly rarer in Europe we've got Tamiya enamels, as they're not commonly sold but they're very good paints, and of course oils. What I should say is I use all of these paints without exception and I'm happy to use all of them. Some of them do definitely have advantages for certain scenarios. Today then we're going to be looking at this side, the acrylics, and I'll start with these, Lifecolor. I can't really tell the story of Lifecolor without mentioning this kit. So this is the Tamiya Schwimmwagen, and this is a kit I made, well, it must be 20 or more years ago. I can't really remember. I made it a long time ago when I was a very young man. But what's important here is the paint finish. This was painted in the early stage of my modelling career, and it was painted with Lifecolors. At the time, the first paint range I'd invested in other than enamels and Tamiya paints were the Vallejo model colours. So I think I was painting with those and trying to spray with them. But in a model shop in France, I discovered a wholly new paint range to me called Lifecolor that I'd never ever heard of. And I used them to paint this Schwimmwagen, and I was completely blown away by the depth and quality of the paint and the smoothness of the finish. Fun enough, the other day I actually found the original 3 or 4 paint colours, so I think I got the Dunkelgelb green and the Rot Brown, and they had finally given up the ghost and I threw them out, but so they'd lasted well over 20 years. But that introduced me to Lifecolor, and then I've been working a lot with Lifecolor since the inception of this YouTube channel, mainly through the help and support of airbrushes.com, who are the distributors of Lifecolor in the UK. So there we go, a little story there, a little piece of modelling history from my youth, and that's one of the reasons why I've used Lifecolor. What I would say as a general rule is I tend to use Lifecolors a bit more for brush painting. They can be airbrushed, and we'll look into that. Right, let's get started with this paint range. I've got quite an extensive collection of Lifecolors, as you can imagine, as I've built them up over the years, both single paints, but what they're most famous for, I guess, are these box sets, of which they've got quite a vast collection in their range. Right, let's start with the most simple questions. These are acrylic paints, so water-based, and they come in these 22 milliliter bottles. Lifecolor's been made in Italy by Astro Model since 1986. And if we just give one a shake, this is from one of their recent sets, the Essential Basic and Primary Coloured Set. You'll see that the packaging has changed and bottle design has changed a little bit in terms of labelling over the years, but it's essentially the same. You get these small bottles with a wide open mouth, and there you can see what the paint looks like. You can see the consistency there. So quite thick, and a water-based acrylic. As such, I've made countless videos on using these with a brush to paint figurines, and you'll see them on the channel. What I would say, as you can clearly see there, is it's too thick for airbrushing. So whilst you can dilute the paints very easily with tap water for your brush painting, what you discover very quickly is that for spraying you will need to use their acrylic thinner, or as we'll discover a bit later, there might be alternatives, but I recommend using their acrylic thinner. Now throughout this video I'll be posting up other videos that I've made that explain various aspects. So when it comes to spraying, there is a dedicated video all about spraying paints like these through your airbrush. But many of you I know are brush painters, and these are excellent brush painted acrylics. I really like them. They dry very matte. They're extremely controllable, and the range of colours is fantastic. One thing that's worth noting is they are quite large format opening bottles, but I find they do generally last many years, as long as you keep them closed. I have had one or two that have died over the years. So I had, for example, if you look at my Matilda video where I painted a Matilda tank in the desert camouflage scheme, one of those paints had perished. So they do sometimes perish, and I don't know what might cause it, but the majority of them, I go to them after years and they're still fine. Certain other paints, like Vallejo, notably use a dropper system, and those paints have lasted without question for 20+ years. But many of my Lifecolor paints have lasted an equally long period of time. And that's the bottle then. Next up, it's worth talking about the different types of packs that you find in the range. So they're most famous for these sort of packs, 6 colour packs that are based around a theme. So these are aviation ones. For example, this is Vietnam. What's noticeable is that recently they've started changing the packaging. So they've got rid of this style of box. I quite liked this style of box because it allows you to store your paints away from UV, away from the sunlight, and you can keep them all organised vertically, and having the spine was great. But of course nowadays the box dimensions are different and the spine is different. Nevertheless, it's a neat way to arrange everything. So 9 times out of 10 you'll get a paint set based around a theme. In the past they used to do these handy little sets of 3 paints called Easy 3, and it seems now, if we look at this one for Battle of Britain, they've tended to expand them now so you can get 6 colour sets. But the Easy 3s don't seem to be that common, or generally they're out of stock. Recently they've started bringing out these, which are 4 jar sets based around a bunch of themes. So these are all new. So if you're an aviation modeler, we've got some aircraft interior colours, Axis aircraft interior colours. You can see here there's Day Fighter scheme, World War II for your Spitfires, tropical land schemes, camouflage sets for your tanks here. Some Italian uniforms there, Panzer crew uniform set, and here the German Army Splinter camouflage for uniforms. So these are all relatively new additions, so this video serves as a bit of a roundup as well. And then inside it's just the same score. You've got the paints, slightly different packaging now, they're all labelled and easy to use. But it's worth noting that some of these boxes come with a mix of different products. So in their compact set range, you get a combination of colours, washes and pigments. So if we're to open this one up, one of the funny thing over the years is the boxes were quite hard to open. Now they've made them more easy. But this one, you've got your standard acrylic paints, but then you've got things like liquid pigments, which I love, which are removable pigment washes. More on those in a minute. And it comes bundled with some actual pigments, and their pigments are really good quality. I use them all the time. So for example, I use their reflecting agent a lot. Over here you can see a typical set of 5 liquid pigments and their remover. So I've done a video on those. Also you get combo sets like this that combine paint references with special pigments. And often they're based around things like mud, dust, dirt, tracks and so on for your vehicles. But those are very good and give you access both to a pigment range and to a paint range. They also do some other sort of combo sets that are more powder and colour sets. So this is Lichens and Moss. That is a great little set that combines various types of vegetation along with binders or fixers, and I use them on my Mustang Barn Find large scale model. Also slightly rare and something people possibly don't know about, they also have something called Tensocroms that I've made a video about, and these are surface agents, subtle wash surface agents that are really good and useful and have a variety of different uses and effects as well. So that broadly summarises the whole range, lots of different things. But what I particularly love are their figure sets, including this, which is their flesh paint. This is their second set in the series, and we'll also probably be using this set as well, as I've got some figures from the Vietnam era that I've prepared for painting, and I've also got my standard paint mule, the Verlinden Sherman M4A2 hull that's been on the channel for years. As part of a test of the whole system, we're going to begin with some choices of primer. For many years there wasn't really a primer. All I could find was this single reference LC primer. Now you can get a series of primers offering high pigment and maximum coverage, and they've started offering surface primers as well. So the plan today then, having introduced you to the range, is using my sample pieces. We'll be trying out some of their primer products, using those, and then we'll get stuck into using a few of these extra matte acrylics in a follow-up video on a real subject. We'll go with olive drab, and this, as you can see, is the old format box where paints are embedded in the packaging. Now, like with all paints, we'll give it a thorough shake. First off, we'll start with some brush painting. So I'm very conscious that many people don't airbrush, so we'll do this little section here by brush. As you can see, the paint's quite thick, but they brush on well. So we'll do that little segment by brush, try and get rid of our brush strokes, and let that dry. As I've explained before, I've never had any trouble with these paints when it comes to brush painting. They really are excellent. They go on smooth and they dry flat. This is of course a primer, slightly different, but we'll see how that dries. Whilst that's drying, I'm going to mix this up for spraying. And I'm going to do that by mixing it with their acrylic thinner. And I'll put the ratios on screen. So as many modelers will know, you want your paint to be the consistency of milk for spraying. And primers really are no different. You can see there that that is very thick, so it will need diluting. Something like that is what you want. To spray it, you'll ideally want something with a 0.5mm needle, something like that. You'll see it's perfectly sprayable, in this case through a Badger Extreme paint strip. I haven't even cleaned it, so it's a good test of these paints. But there you can see with the correct mix, it goes on really well. Let's try so you can see the difference, the surface primer. Now the difference here, I'd say straight away, is you can see it's more fluid, or at least it appears to be to me. So you can compare it there with the one I mixed up. So I'm going to try and spray this out of the bottle. The idea of something like this coming in these dropper bottles is that you spray it undiluted. Shake well before use, can be used by brush or airbrush. For airbrush, use thin the primer with the Lifecolor acrylic thinner. Yeah, so you can thin it if you're having trouble. Whereas I think these smaller 22ml bottles, the idea is that you dilute it. Yeah, so through the 0.5 it's spraying well. This, with a big enough needle and nozzle combination, can easily be sprayed. So we'll let those dry off and we'll compare. And for the brush painters there, I use the same brush and brush paint a small section so you can see how it fares as a brush painted primer. The grey probably needs a couple of coats. Okay, we'll let those dry. And whilst they're drying, I'll quickly hit these Vietnam figures with the military green. So the key to using these primers, and indeed any primers, is thin, repeated coats. So what we can see that an area that was perhaps a little bit of a weakness for Lifecolor in the past, primers, they've got some lovely surface primers now, come out very well brushed, as we can see there. The grey probably needs a couple of coats, but they give a lovely smooth, even finish. Forgive all the dust and dirt, but it shows it there. This bit I cleaned up, not that bit. You can see there, they give a very subtle sheen. These guys, the paint is still drying, but those were the surface primers applied by airbrush. And what I may well do, I've got the option now with the box set of primers. As I move to detail painting with the acrylic paints, I can also block out various areas like the face in a primer as well, if I need to. Alright, so with that done, our figures are ready for brush painting in the more normal acrylic base shades. And in the next video, I'll start painting these figures and talking a bit more about using these with brushes and airbrushes. It'll be a chance to try out this paint set and this other paint set here, and to discuss various aspects of using these paints, including troubleshooting them with a brush or airbrush. If you want a very detailed introduction to all sorts of model paints and aspects of model paints, I strongly recommend this. Painting Models by Alessandro Bruschi, Materials and Methods, Volume 6 in the Static Model Manual. And it uses extreme detail to explain a lot of the composition of different types of paints, for example the more alcohol-based acrylics like the Tamiyas, as opposed to the water-based ones, obviously enamels as well. But it's very useful in explaining different options as correct at the time of publication. But you can see it compares and contrasts different products. It also explains the intercompatibility of certain paint ranges. It also has tables on what you can mix with what cleaners and thinners you can use with different paints, what your options are in terms of products to use alongside different paint ranges, how you maintain your paints, the composition of any particular paint and the different layers and binders and so on that make up the paint. So that's very useful. That rounds up the summary of the primers and surface primers by Lifecolor. Next time we'll be continuing the exploration of this paint system by looking at brush painting and also airbrushing their paints. See you then. Bye.
Subscribe for our latest videos.